Okay, and welcome. Here we are with Justice Radio Network once again. Today it's the 9th of November. Welcome all to Justice Radio Network, and today we have a great conversation again with Ken Cousins. So I'm really glad to have him here with us again. Welcome, Libby. Glad to have you here too.
Thank you, sister, and yes, welcome, Ken. Very happy to have you here with us. And hey, Rachel. Yay! But really great. So we're in the green territory.
That looks nice. I'm here with Reiki too. So that's really cool to be here in this wonderful environment. And
lucky you two, you're looking at land. How sweet is that? Woo, ooh, ooh.
Having lots of fun traveling around. We went to a beautiful area today called Maggie Valley in North Carolina, and that was very, very lovely. So, we've been having just quite some adventures, just enjoying being, together, and looking at land, being in nature, tramping around the countryside. It's been beautiful weather for it. It has. We've been really enjoying it, and we've got lots of beautiful visions as to what we're going to be creating in the future. So it's very wonderful, and I'm really so grateful to Ken for the guidance he's been able to give me in certain directions. We're going to get a few questions going, I know, with a few people today, but I'm definitely going to see if he could share with us some of the estate structure that he does within Gemstone University, because that is a valuable tool for us to create things we need to create.
Especially with what you're doing. I mean, this is so exciting, Ken. We're so happy you're coming because we have lots to find out from you. And
that's right. Lots of ways of doing things whereby we would have to be sort of very much in the system to do what we need to do. But this way, with the private societies and the structure that he's been able to put together and guide us through, it enables me to be able to create this ultimately this Heart Song Spiritual Society community without having to go the means that others would have to go within the system and all the names and this and that, the other. Trusts are going to be, only thing. It's a case of own and control everything, and that's one of the things Ken's been teaching us. So I know that he's going to come on board with that sort of information. He's already been sharing it here, there and there, but it's something we haven't talked about on Just Us much, I don't think. So that's I'd like him to share with us when he's he's ready. And then of course we're going to ask everybody.
Oh yeah, he's ready.
Okay. We'll ask everybody who has got a question. Maybe those of you that are here on Zoom, keep your cameras closed until such time you are questioning. Put a message in the group app to let us know you want to ask a question, and then we'll make sure we filter you into the conversation. And then if you want to open your camera up, then that's a good time to do that. Anyone that's on a phone, I guess you'll have to open your mic and your number will come up on the screen and we'll know you're wanting to say something, and we'll ask you on then when we know that's happening. So yeah, so Ken, thanks so much for being here with us again. We're really, really always grateful to have you join us. He's muted. Should be able to mute himself. Here we go. Unmute. Oop. My cursor is like a nightmare. Look at it.
Yeah, can you unmute yourself, Ken? Because Jolly's working with.
I've done it.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh well, I've done it.
Yay!
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a very uncontrollable cursor. When I have Zoom on the computer, like my cursor's like woo, woo, woo. So I'm very slow in commands here. But anyway, welcome.
Thank you. Well, you should probably stop cursing your cursor and then.
I'm gonna have to stop cursing it. Absolutely right. So yeah, have you got anything to share with us, or?
Nope, that's really it. So thanks for having me, and I'll see you next time.
All right, that saves us a bit of time, right?
It's really been nice, and I appreciate everything, and nice to see you all. Like to see the butterflies next to Libby, and who's that fellow next to you, Jolly?
Reiki.
Hi, Ken. Greetings.
Reiki.
What's his name?
Reiki.
Reiki. Very nice. Muy bien. Nice to meet you.
So I've been hanging out at Reiki's place, our family, and he's been going with me along with Mela and the two kids. We've been looking around lots of beautiful areas here on this place known as North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to join me in the Heart Song Spiritual Society. We're going to create a beautiful community. And they and a few other beautiful beings are going to join me, and we're going to, start to do, walk the talk, really. So that's fun. Good time.
Okay, well, very good. Well, what would you like to start with?
Well, the one thing I was talking about just now was I'm very much acknowledging appreciation for your having put together this estate structure. And we haven't kind of really run through that much on the times you've been here with us on Just Us Radio. So I think maybe it would be a really good time for you to explain what it is, what it does, because I'm acknowledging how helpful it's going to be for me for doing what I've just talked about, putting together a community. I can use it for all sorts of things, like connecting with utilities and phones and internets and stuff like that. I can trust the
very, very good place to start.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Yeah,
okay.
That's brilliant. So if you could explain the purpose of it and what we can use it for as living beings.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to refer back to our last conversation. Okay. In the latter part of the conversation, I forget his name, but there was a man who came down who was very educated in lots of things pertaining to trust and related topics. He referred to a book from 1837 by Llewellyn, I believe was the author. And one of the points that he brought up was, well, aren't all the things that you're doing, trusts and things like that, really the old, coming out of the old system, and then acquiescing, for lack of a better term, but that's a pretty appropriate term, to basically how they, quote unquote, whoever they are, have created a world system. And my response was that it's very important to not resist or react or polarize to, quote unquote, they or the world system or whatever. And that my work has been focused for decades, really, on breaking down the code, decoding the code of the matrix, figuring out all of these things, and understanding how to reapply all of it for our best security, privacy, immunities, and protections, using all of the building blocks, understanding, not necessarily all of them, but those that are pertinent and valuable to us, understanding that that it's not a matter of the building blocks themselves. It's a matter of how they're constructed and how they're rearranged so that that we're at the effect of it. They're the cause of it. They're the causal directorship of the world system, and the effect that we live within is basically bonded debt enslavement. And unless and until we, one, understand how that's put together, and then secondly, use our intelligence to rearrange it. So we're using our knowledge and integration of that knowledge to rearrange the building blocks so that we are the cause of our own reality. We create, we direct, and we use it to our best benefit. And by doing that, we cannot be construed as being anarchists, even though Jeff Berwick might have something to say about that. Although when he asked me if I was an anarchist, I said, in the absolute sense, that anarchy simply means lack of power or no one with power, as in a hierarchical structure. But I used it just a moment ago in the context of anarchy in terms of trying to bring down government, anti-government, anti-system, all of that. Because whether we're talking about in a literal, practical sense, in the legal, commercial, and monetary sense, anytime we polarize with something, we're still attached to it. We create a controversy that puts us in the field of battle, and basically that's where we are controlled. So as we've talked about already in our sessions, that removing oneself from the field of battle and going to peace and standing as peace, which means not in polarity, not in controversy, then there is no hooks in us. So by following the law and using it to our optimum application and benefit, we can't be construed. Look at how things are construed in the public, conspiracy theorists and sovereign citizens and all of that. And we're taking the hook out of all of that. So, and the other thing that I said to that man in that discussion is we are in a transition. I agree with him. Ultimately, I want to see us end up, and I know we will end up at some point where we can jettison all of this stuff, all of this entanglement, all of this complexity, and just be simple people on the land, planting our seeds and doing what we want to do in life. But we're not there yet, okay? We have a long way to go. We have to use the system as it is. The only way out is in. Anything else is creating controversy and polarity and all of that. So that's my prefatory remarks relative to where we're now going to go. So within that context, in understanding the world system, understanding trust law and estate law, estate structure, where it fits within the multidimensional construction of law as a totality. Most people don't understand there are many types of law, which means also a type of jurisdiction. There's admiralty and maritime, which controls obviously the law of the sea, but also bankruptcy and civil procedure, things like that, which is a system that we are basically bonded and attached to and controlled within and put into perpetual debt bondage. And there is kingdom law, ecclesiastical law, canon law, commercial law, natural law, common law. There are many types of laws. One of those is called equity. And this is essential to understanding how estate law and trust law works, because they are within the context of equity. And the main reason they're in equity is that all things, all entities that are created, including actually a natural man or a natural woman, who hold some sort of value within their control, whether it's a corporation or a trust or an estate or a living man. There's one thing that's universal that we all have in common, which is that there has to be a continuum or a line of succession of who receives that value, either when I die and I leave a will and I have beneficiaries of that will, or when property is held in a corporate form or in a private form. Trusts are private forms. Estates are private forms. Essentially, that's called a beneficial owner. Anywhere you go on this planet, if you go to any jurisdiction and you open a bank account, they will ask you a primary question: who is the beneficial owner of this account? So unless you want to live in a cave and not operate in the world, which means you will be completely ineffectual. You will have no ability to affect real transformation or change in the world. Unless that's your choice, then you're going to interact with the system. If you're going to move what's currently called money, notwithstanding the whole cryptocurrency and all of that, but if you're going to move money through the system, like Jolly, I know you're moving money through the system now, bringing in some funds from an inheritance, okay? You are the beneficiary of that estate, correct? Okay, so I know you're on mute, and just shake your head and wave.
That was it.
Okay, so your family member who left that to you established a will, created a trust, and essentially a will creates an estate, and in effect a trust, and it has a beneficiary. If we create a corporation and we go to a bank and they say who's the beneficial owner, we put the corporate documents there and say this is the beneficial owner. But if we put the corporation in the bank account, they want to know who, how is that set up? Where is it set up? Where is the jurisdiction? And where's the beneficiary for that? A normal corporation would say, well, we have shareholders, but we're registered or domiciled in Delaware or Panama or something like that. So that's the gist of it, is who's the beneficial owner. Secondly, a trust has a split title. There are two types of title in the trust: a legal title, which is held by the trustee, and a beneficial title or beneficiary or equitable title that's held by the beneficiary. That's how a trust works. And an estate is similar in that it's what would be called a testamentary trust, where the property belonging to the trust must be settled and liquidated. The types of estates most people are used to being aware of is, like in your case, when your family member passed away, she left a testamentary trust and you were the beneficiary. Once the assets of the trust are the trust dissolves. It goes away. You now have title, or your that trust disappears. Contrary for hundreds and thousands of years to the benefit of the elite and the landholders and those who have controlled the majority of the wealth in this world, is they created perpetual estates. And with that, the estate would always hold the assets. It would be the owner of the assets, but there would always be a living beneficiary, someone who was alive, who was a beneficiary, who could occupy that estate. And when that living beneficiary died, it would move to the next living beneficiary in a line of succession. So we use that within the status correction course, because we change our status from a bonded surety to a living man or a living woman, and we claim our estate. And as such, we become what's called the Sestake V, which translates to living beneficiary. So we do that within the status correction course, and we've talked about that before, and we can cover it some more later in this call. But there are people who are not ready to do status correction, okay? It's a big undertaking. And so what we've created inside Pantera is to reproduce the model of how we created Pantera as a private society. And the society comes together. It can be two or more people, so it only requires two people come together, create a society, and out of that coming together in the creation of the society, an office is created. That office is called a corporation sole, okay, S-O-L-E. And the office itself is the holder of the assets that accrue to the benefit of the society. So the office is perpetual. That's the way the system has been created. That's how the popes and the presidents and the kings and queens and the landed gentry and the aristocracy have been operating so that there would not be a breakdown of the estates that were held by the landed part of the population. Gentry, yeah. And so if you haven't or don't want to or have not as yet done status correction where you're the living beneficiary as a living being, then you can still take all the assets and all the contracts out of your individual name, which is your franchise. As you were just saying, you can remove all of the, you can take your cars and any other kind of transportation, boats, planes, trains, aircraft carrier, whatever you got in the backyard, and put the title in a type of trust and make the corporation sole the beneficiary. So this way you have nothing in your name in that respect. You can do the same with utilities, as you mentioned, et cetera, et cetera. And so we call it the estate structure because it's an estate holding property for a beneficiary. Who's the beneficial owner? Well, in the case of a society, the members are the beneficial owner. The being who occupies and holds the office of the corporation sole has the directorship and the control of those assets, can direct how they're managed, what's done with them, but he or she does not own them. Therefore, there is no attachment to someone who is still attached to a franchise as the surety. So it's a separation. It's a good form for asset protection because one of the things we do is we put all the different assets in different holding entities, trusts or otherwise, so that, I mean, that's just a standard for asset protection, going back a long time. If you put all of your assets in one name, whether it's your individual franchise name or a corporation sole, which still can be sued, if you have lots of cars and land and houses and many, many things in there, and somebody wants to sue, they can go after everything owned by that entity. And if they win, they can take it if they get a judgment. Okay, so simple asset protection, separate liability, put every car in a different holding trust, in a different, what we call carriage trust, put the land in a different holding trust, put that title on record at the county of it being in that trust. And so, but if you see it as say a bicycle wheel, with a hub in the center and many spokes radiating out from the hub. And at the end of each spoke is one of the holding entities for your assets. If you were in a commercial business with a retail store, you might have an LLC. So you have a corporate entity that gets a business license. Okay, so it's not attached to the private entity, which is the corporation sole or the society, or if you've done status correction yourself. Some people have a reason to be in commerce. And so, like if they have a retail store, they're going to have to sign a lease, they're going to have to get a business license, all that kind of stuff. There's no problem with that. So fine, get a corporate entity, an LLC, to do that. Each one of those has some sort of ownership, beneficial owner, and that comes down to the center of the hub of the wheel, which is the office that holds all the assets that belong to the society. And the office holder, also called an overseer, controls and directs that office and the assets for the beneficiary or the benefit of the society and its beneficiaries, which are its members. So it's a perfect form for many types of applications. People who are in the healing arts, and they're being hounded by the public for licenses or things like that. You can move everything into a private society, as we did for Pantera 15 years ago. And as long as it's done right, and you don't have a hidden attachment to the public where they still have jurisdiction, then you can operate it totally privately. And then it's simply the right of private contract, the right of private association. And so Pantera is called a private contract association. You create your articles of association and you do everything according to essentially a private form of governance. And the society can have its own, it is a government. It governs a certain population. It has its own jurisdiction. That is the members who voluntarily choose to be part of that. So if you're buying land as you are and creating a society, this is the best way to do that. It keeps everything very straightforward and clear. Your articles of association establish the guidelines of our self-governance, the way we want to live and work together, things like that. How to settle disputes, because that's going to happen. How do you do that? Well, you have your own law form. Any rule that you create in your society is your law form. You can adopt anything anywhere in the world as part of your law form without jurisdictional attachment. So if you like the way Panama does a certain thing within its statutory code, whatever that may be, how it manages, rules dealing with agriculture or livestock or something like that, you can adopt that as part of your law form without being attached to their jurisdiction. So you build your law form and you create a forum for adjudication. What does that mean? It means a court. Now, is that a statutory court that's dealing with commerce and settling everything in the public? No, it's our private society law form and forum for dispute resolution, things like that. You can be your own bank. You can have your own treasury. You can hold the assets however you want. Many, many things like that you can do within this form. So,
that's really, a good outline of what can be done there within that state structure. So it's really a case of us doing, like, I've made the first few steps and I've created the society. And actually, as we speak, Libby is holding the documents to sign and scribe. And so we're kind of making progress in that direction. So what would people do then to get started with this? I mean, I know because I had to do the mission statement, all of that. Would you like to describe what the steps are to kind of make a start there?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first step is you become a member of Pantera. And that's very simple to do. You go to gemstoneuniversity.org, you go up to the upper left, it says join now, you follow the steps, you become a member. Then you contract with Pantera to enter into the estate structure course and do the steps that you're doing. We create the documents, they're templates, generic templates, but you add your own individual components. The name of your society, who is overseer, who is scribe, and you write a mission statement. The mission statement is basically, everything is synergistic. It's a whole picture. So you have a society that creates an office that is perpetual, that will always own the assets. You have an overseer who occupies the office. If and when the overseer dies or becomes incapacitated, that line of succession is perpetual. The office is always there. It will always hold those assets. They don't belong to the overseer. Therefore, if the overseer has a tax issue or any other issue, neither a government or a tax authority or a private individual, say, suing the overseer for something personal, can go after the things that belong to the office because he or she does not own them. Okay, so now the society is perpetual. It will build and accrue the assets. And what binds the overseer is the mission statement. Okay, in a sense it binds because it's what we say is what we are applying the assets to fulfill for the benefit of the society. We have to establish what it exists for. So we create a mission statement. But that's an organic document. It builds and grows and modifies. It's not fixed and rigid and all of that. So we have all that in place. We have the permanent court of the Ecclesia of Pantera Deora as a permanent court of record where all the records are held and, and stored basically. You also have original copies of that. We just store and archive electronic copies. And so basically, and then the course, so to speak, the education is learning as you go, working with either me, other members, some of the team. As you know, we have chats that help, that are interactive. And so it's decentralized. Now, the only issue, of course, is that you have to sign everything over to me first, and you give it all to me because I own everything. Okay, just want to make that clear. Okay, of course that's a joke, but believe me, a lot of people think that. We've had quite a number of people over the years say, well, you're just creating this, dictatorship. You're the overseer of Pantera. You control everything, and therefore you own it, and you're going to take it from me, and so forth. Well, first of all, that's not true. Second of all, we have our law form. Okay, there is the rules in the sense of a law form of how we govern ourselves. This is what it's really all about: self-governance, self-determination. What protects us is that all of the corporate nations in the world that belong to this daddy corporation called the United Nations have issued a statement that they've all bound themselves for them. They've issued many statements. We use them to our benefit. One of those is a covenant of International Covenant of Human Rights, which included in that is the paramount right of self-determination. We have in this country the right or freedom of religion. You still there? I just got my voice coming back to me. Okay.
That was somebody that came in with their mic open.
Oh, okay. These are the things that we use to our advantage. So there's the foundation of it is both our right to self-determination, our right to self-governance, which is sort of the flip side of the same coin. So we create our rules of governance. In Pantera, and based on my education and my research, I have integrated all forms that, and as I said, like if we want to adopt something from Panama or Mexico or whatever, we can do that. So I've gone into all the primary law forms, the ecclesiastical law form, the kingdom law, the commercial law, equity, and things like that. And we've integrated into essentially the law form of our court of the ecclesia. Ecclesia means the body, the physical body of who we are. And as opposed to a fictional body, as in a corporation. And in that law form, common law, which very few people actually really understand. And I definitely don't say I'm a absolute expert at it, but I've looked at it quite extensively and understand the fundamentals of how it's put together. One of the keys of that is how what's called a court of record is established. And in a court of record, proceeding pursuant to the common law, it's also a synergy. One piece doesn't exist by itself. It has a corresponding or a co-relationship with all the pieces. Okay, the same as what we're talking about within a state structure and a society. It's the same thing. If you pull one piece out and say, well, look at this piece, it's going to lead me to such and such, like the example that I made a joke of. Like, well, Ken's the overseer, he controls Pantera. If I come into Pantera, he owns me or owns everything. That's taking one piece out of context. You can't do that. If you want to take a living man and pull his heart out and say, well, look at this heart, it doesn't really keep him alive. Well, that's because you pulled it out of his body and now he's dead. Okay. It's the same thing. A whole human body is interdependent. The heart is a whole system. It operates on heart principles. And so it is separate from the lungs and the liver and all the rest of it, but it is interdependent. The body doesn't judge hierarchically, doesn't say the liver is the most important thing, blah, blah, blah. Well, if the liver didn't have the heart, then it wouldn't do its job. Same thing. So when you look at the beauty of how common law was created and what a court of record is, it's the same kind of thing. And this is what I've integrated, and not just me, many of our team in Pantera, how to integrate and create the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, to create a governing form and a law form that is the best of everything that humanity has developed over thousands of years. So the court of record is a perfect example. A court of record recognizes that the moving party, or what you would know as a plaintiff, is actually the sovereign. He or she is recognized as the sovereign, which means he has I'll just use the he form, has nobody above him, no higher authority. As in a corporation or a municipality or a board of supervisors or a national government or the United Nations, there is no authority over a true sovereign. And if there is something, and in order to be in law, in common law, you must be sovereign. In order to be sovereign, you must be solvent. If you are bankrupt or you are underwater in debt, then you are in an impaired status, which is why we are all, quote unquote, not sovereigns in this public civil debt system. That's why we do status correction, to sever the bonded surety relationship to the bankrupt franchise so that we are solvent. When you're solvent, you have standing to state a claim, which is phonetically equal to staking a claim. So when you stake a claim, you stake four corners and you have the land that's within the metes and bounds, the meters and boundaries of that land. You have standing. And with that, you have the substantive right to a true common law form. Therefore, if there's an issue that you want an adjudicating body to settle, something that's in controversy, you must bring your court to a venue that is appropriate. And the word venue in law is defined as the county from which the jury is derived. So here's where common law comes in. So a county has a defined parameter in terms of metes and bounds. Okay, so we're in the county of San Bernardino, which for most people is a corporation. It doesn't exist except in the fictional area of the mind. But if you've moved onto the land, then it exists in law, and it has a defined metes and bounds on the land. Okay, so if that was my jurisdiction, the jury of my peers would be derived from that county. But my peers would be anybody who has the same standing or status that I do. Okay. So since it's so complexified and overlaid with all the stuff of the corporate form and everything that we know about, we have a private jurisdiction. And the word jurisdiction is defined as where you place yourself by oath and bond, okay? Because juris, which means law in Latin, also means oath. So who we take an oath to, not in a religious form, not in a feudal form, because a feudal oath is an oath of fealty, which means I have a lord above me and I'm his vassal. And I make serfs because I'm their liege lord or their landlord. That's a hierarchical structure. So in Pantera, it's non-hierarchical. We all have equal standing. that is the county or the jurisdiction that simply by agreeing that we're members and we're going to comport ourselves according to the law form of the society, that we are peers together. We are a court of living men and women withstanding in our own private society. And so when I bring a court to that venue, in order to create the synergy and balance it out, there must be all the component parts. Well, if I have a claim against somebody, let's say, Jolly, you ran over my cat, and I have a claim, and I want to bring it to a court, then I bring my court to the venue and establish a court of record. A court of record is simply where the evidence is lodged as a permanent court of record so that the evidence can be reviewed by a jury of one's peers. The defendant, and additionally, the sovereign makes the law. So when I bring my court of record, I can establish the law of the case. And as the person I learned this from, who's a true master in common law, a man named Bill Thornton, who lives in Southern California, not far from here. And for anybody interested in his work, go to the numbers 1215.org, which is the year of the Magna Carta. And you can learn a lot about everything I'm talking about. And so his favorite analogy is, well, if I bring my court of record and say that Jolly ran over my cat and she was wearing pink shoes, and the law of the case is that pink shoes are subject to the death penalty. Anybody who runs over a cat wearing pink shoes is subject to the death penalty. Okay. So, but I totally authorize, or, I'm sovereign. I can make the law. So I create that law, but Jolly, as the defendant, can answer to it and derive a jury of her peers. And the jury judges the law and the facts. And if they see the law is unjust, then they can nullify the law. Okay? So if they look at my law, the law of the case, and they say that that's ridiculous, only blue shoes should be the death penalty, pink shoes should not be the death penalty. Well, okay, the evidence shows she was wearing pink shoes, so that's it. She gets off free. And so the jury that's why it's called a trial by jury, because the jury is trying the case, and they can nullify the law, and they will have the authority to, to judge the facts and so forth. So in Pantera, in our law form, every dispute within our private society must be, or can be, we won't say must be, can be settled in a court of record. And therefore, we are self-regulating, self-governing, and all the rest of that. And anything external to our jurisdiction has no authority. They cannot come in and say, we don't like how you're doing this, we don't like your law, your form of governance, or anything. And so the synergy of the fact that I'm the sovereign, I can bring the court of record, I bring the evidence that I have, the defendant brings his or her evidence, and the jury judges on those points. And the judge, say there's a justice or a judge on the case, he or she does not decide the case. They're only the referee. They're only managing the flow of the case and making sure that it's done properly. So within the larger context, Ken, as overseer of the corporation sole called Pantera de Oro, which holds the assets for the benefit of the society, cannot act like a dictator. And if he does, he can be brought before the court of the ecclesia. And I would be judged according to everything I've just described. And so the same applies for creating trusts and having the board of trustees of Pantera be the trustee. Same thing. I've gotten that question numerous times. Well, if you're the board of trustees, that means, you own everything. No, we don't. We hold legal titles so that you cannot be attached if you have a tax issue or a liability or anything else. It's the same thing. This is done for our mutual benefit, our protections and immunities, and everything that we want in creating a private society. And my only answer to people when they say, well, I don't care, it still looks like you're controlling or whatever, I say, fine. If you don't like me doing how I've set it up within all these, true checks and balances, then good luck with the corporation called the Crown Corporation and its, subdivision called the United States. If you think they can manage all of your affairs better, then hey, there's lots of ways you can jump right in. Okay. But those who want real freedom in an unfree world, this has been designed for a complete, comprehensive, private environment where we have the protections and immunities. And it's already been road tested. It's already been tested pretty much at the highest level of the potential of being penetrated and undermined by the system, which, just to sum that up, without going into a long story, even though I have not filed a tax return since 1988, my franchise did create a tax liability in the early 2000s. The IRS has been trying to apply that for 14 years, really, and tried to come after me about almost 2 years ago with a local IRS officer. And I set it up as a trust through status correction, appointed him as the trustee, gave him the ability to settle that liability, and he still tried to come after all the Pantera bank accounts. We had, at the time, we reduced it. At the time, we had probably between 15 and 20 bank accounts that I had a signature on as a trustee. And he pulled the records of every one of those accounts, trying to, all he wanted was to go find $400,000, which they said was the liability, and pull it from anywhere. And we had 2 meetings with him where we told him it was all private. You have no authority, et cetera, et cetera. He still pulled all the bank accounts. That was 1.5 years ago. And we have been operating those bank accounts without any problem. So, and all we said to him was, it's a private society, doesn't belong to this franchise. You have no authority for that. And everything was set up properly and they couldn't touch it. And we've run a considerable amount of funds through those accounts without any problem. So it is tried and tested, because I can guarantee you if the IRS could have taken money from those accounts, they would have. So that shows that I, as the overseer of Pantera, am not the owner of its assets. So it's the same for when you create as you have your society, you buy the land that you find, put it in a trust, does not say who the beneficiary is on the public record, and we keep most of the records private. The public has no right and no way to compel the private trust records of either a trust or a society or a corporation sole or any of that, unless they have jurisdiction, which they don't.
Yeah, well, that certainly keeps everything away from those who are coming after us. So I would like to get you to explain, there's at least one member of ours that has been running his own business. And I do know that you've mentioned before that it is possible to put a small business into the estate structure.
Yes.
If somebody's running a mechanic's garage or something like that, and they wanted to put their business in, how would they go about doing that? How would that work?
Okay. Okay, there's subtleties and nuances that that I will point out. Like I said earlier, if in almost all cases he doesn't own that building that he's in and has not gone through a status correction process to claim the land and has not attached any of the business to the public system, then one way or the other he is in and is attached to the public. Okay. For example, he's got a commercial lease on the building. He has a business license. Now, there's level and degree. Depending on at what level he wants to, perfect his relationship to his private status. And I say he has a private status, even if he has a public persona, as in terms of a franchise. When you create the estate structure course and you create the society and the corp sole and so forth, you have a private status. It is separate from your bonded surety relationship to the public franchise. So most people, the normal way is you create a corporation or an LLC, or you do it as a sole proprietor. Either way, it always comes back to what the public system will look at as the beneficiary, which is what's called the cess-decay trust, which is, and it gets a little technical, but let me put that on pause and digress a minute. The whole thing about the living beneficiary, the cess-decay v, goes back to the cess-decay v Act of 1666, which basically said we have cess-decay v's who've gone to sea, have not come back, are presumed dead. We want to pronounce them dead so that we can pass the living beneficial status to the next generation or the next living beneficiary. If that man who went to sea is not able to be pronounced dead, it left the estate in suspense. So they passed the act, and they said after 7 years, if he doesn't return, then he can be pronounced dead, and he is as good as dead, even though he might be on another side of the planet and still be alive. For all intents and purposes, within the realm, let's say it's England, he is dead. Okay. And there's even modern cases of things like that where somebody disappears. There was a case that was in the newspapers about 2-3 years ago. A guy disappeared for 20 years. They pronounced him dead. Every jurisdiction has a presumption of death statute, okay, which everything that we deal with is based on worldwide. And when I say deal with, meaning we want to, separate from that presumption of death. So he came back and said, hey, I'm Joe Smith, and I want to come back into my life. And he went to court, and basically the judge says, I'm sorry, you're dead to me. I don't see you. You don't exist. You've been pronounced dead. So that's the cess-decay v Act, the presumption of death and related things. So, and that's how estates are held, as I described earlier. In Section 4 of the cess-decay v Act, it provides for what if a man returns from being lost at sea, claims his estate, proves he's the living man, and what happens then? Well, what happens then is that all profit and proceed that was created off of the estate during the time of his absence, under the control of the executors, must revert back to him. He must be reinvested or revested with the substance of what was created off of the estate. Okay. And I'm not going to go into status correction and how we work with that, but that's an underlying key point. So if by our authority that we've created as Pantera in the society, and we create, and we're fully recognized at this point, we have our private archives of records and all the rest, and one of our members with the standing as a private being in our society. You may be a public bonded surety out there, but in the Pantera society, you are a living woman or a living man. And so when you create a society, two or more come together, create a society, create the office, that corporation soul, and you occupy it, you're occupying it as a private being. Okay. And so back to your mechanic, well, the way most people would create set up the relationships of their business, they would either be a sole proprietor or a corporation or an LLC, and they would get a business license, they would get a lease for the property, they'd have all kinds of other entanglements and attachments. They'd have to have workman's compensation insurance and all the things, all the regulatory things that are there to chip away at what that being can build as their own personal estate or wealth that actually means anything. Because conversely, with everything that almost everybody in the public now pays, from insurance to you name it, by the end of the day and the end of the month, there's nothing left. And so they will end up a ward of the state through Social Security or otherwise, and they will essentially die a pauper. You know, most people are in that status now. If you look at the whole world system and the history of it, it's been brought to the point where 90+% of the population lives and dies as a bankrupt and a pauper. And part of it is because we're debt servicing everything, you know. So let's say we want to remove all of that. But at the same time, he hasn't done a full status correction course, and he still has to operate within quasi-relationship to the public. Well, then we could, or he could create an LLC to enter into the lease agreement for the building. And also, here's a bifurcation, a split in the road. Do or not get a business license. Is that required? Most likely it's going to be required by the lease agreement. Okay, that the lessor, the company or whomever is issuing the lease to occupy their building is going to require you operate with a business license. So let's go down that road. Having a business license, you don't want to attach it to your private estate, the society or the corporation sole. And that's the key that many people don't understand. Been a lot of people over the years that we've seen create corporation souls. It's not hard to create. You create a piece of paper. There's lots of words out there in the internet, but they don't know how to run it. They know how to maintain jurisdiction, privacy, and all the rest of it. And so they've gotten a lot of people in a lot of trouble because they don't know how to maintain separation of jurisdiction. But that's what we are absolutely experts on. That's what the course is about, knowing how to do that, set it up properly and maintain it properly. So that which is in the public, keep in the public. As in this example, have an LLC that rents the building, has the lease, and has a business license. Now, if you have a business license, then you're buying and selling within the United States because you got that license from a corporate subdivision of the United States, the city of Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles, or whatever it is. And so you're in the United States when you're operating that business under license, because a license is permission to do something that's illegal. What's illegal is operating in commerce. So you're being given a license to do business in commerce because you're handling the property belonging to the United States. Every wrench in that mechanic shop, the oil buckets and the lifts and the pencils in the office, all were bought with Federal Reserve notes. They belong to the United States, and they weren't properly separated out. So you're operating a franchise of the United States by doing that with a business license. In that regard, then, the net profit created by that LLC is going to be taxable income. So then you would create a holding trust in between so that that holding trust receives the taxable income and takes care of that taxable income with the IRS, which translates to mean you will have to pay that income. A lot of people have gone out with private trusts and corporation souls, and they've gone and done commerce, and they said, you can't tax me, you can't touch me because I'm private. And when they do that, they have traversed, they're operating in commerce in the United States, and they're taxable, period. It's not a matter of what you are, it's a matter of where you do what you do. And if you do what the IRS considers a taxable process, doing a trade or business in the United States, it's going to be taxed. And then the beneficiary of the holding trust can be the corporation sole. You look like you're fading there, Jolly. You need to get a cup of coffee. So I'm not going to go into more and more detail. There's a lot more detail, but suffice to say what I'm laying out here is the layered structure. be in the public with things that belong to the public, create a firewall that interfaces between public and private, and maintain what is private as absolutely private. Now, there's another way to go where if you have things set up, some businesses you have to be in the public. You have to lease something from the public. You have to have a business license. But in many instances, let's take, for example, somebody doing something in the healing arts that normally they go in and get a license, get a massage therapist license or a colon therapist license, or many things that people get licensed. And then they are controlled, delimited, often abused and attacked because they're doing something that's contrary to public policy. Because public policy is, part of that is to maintain the 1/6 of the whole U.S. monetary economy in the death and dying industry. Okay. You are trying to fix our dying chattel property. And so you're harming the public because you are potentially undermining our cash flow, our cash cow. Okay. Because when this person that you're trying to heal was born, somewhere in the records, they chose one of our 5 major death process categories that they would die at a certain time, according to the large statistical base of the actuarial tables of the U.S. system with insurance and all the rest of it. And that person is supposed to die at 58 years old. And if you heal them, they may live to 89. And that's contrary to public policy. And it sounds funny, but that's literally true. Okay. So they have to attack the people. Do you have something to say?
So I absolutely, I mean, I'm laughing, but it's sadly true.
Yeah.
That's actually something some of these types of people might want to be doing, is to be, I mean, Reiki does offer counseling and stuff like that. And
right.
The system, you'd have to have a license to do that. I mean, at the moment, we're just doing like privately, but within the, and that's something, you know, maybe we'll go on to in a while, is to, I'm probably going to be more, at the moment it's just Libby and myself in the Heartsong Spiritual Society. The next thing would be, how do we invite and then include other members into the society?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll lead up to that. So as opposed to a mechanic who may need to have, you know, a lease and a business license and all the rest of it, fine, there are ways to structure it so that you do within the realm of the public what belongs in the public, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and then, but then that which remains, instead of going then into the beneficial ownership of a bonded surety franchise, it will flow onto the private side where it's held by the private society. Then it can be moved, you know, through what we've set up in Pantera into international banking and project development pools and things like that, that will build and grow and direct your building capital in an area that is in alignment with who you are as a society. Okay, whether that society is Joe and Mary as a married couple who can come together and create a society for 2. It can only be, it's fine to be just 2. Or Pantera, which is hundreds and maybe thousands soon, and your society, which will be however many, that rather than it always being held by the franchise name or corporation name, the layered structure is designed so it flows into the private. And then we as a collective body, and this is a really key point of how Pantera has been designed, that many people have asked us over the years, well, for one, and this subject come up with us as well in our conversation, why do we have people donate and quote unquote pay money for our courses and our membership? And my answer is, how can we build what we're building? How are you going to build your society? Are we going to go get government grants? Are we going to, you know, do the things that the system is set up to do that ultimately are control mechanisms? There's hidden control mechanisms in virtually everything. So as a private body, we have to self-generate. We have to self-create. And and the hundreds of members who have donated to Pantera have enabled us to build a very significant, strong, stable foundation that is for the benefit of the society. It's not for my benefit, although I'm a member of the society, and so it is to my benefit, but equally for everybody else. So what we've been able to accomplish in the last couple of years, which was our vision for the last 20, was we now have a private bank in the Bahamas. We now have a network of banks throughout the world that we've built for 20 years. We have projects that we are capitalizing and or putting capital and funds into that are synergistic. They're good for the purpose of the project. They're going to build revenue or cash flow. Don't like revenue, which means revenue, but inflow, cash flow, and accrue wealth, because that's what we need to do in this world, is to accrue wealth by people with the intentions that we share, which is to build a different world, one that works for life. And so one of the mechanisms to do that is where and how you direct the overflow or the overage above and beyond running your private business or keeping your life stable, that as you build, where do we direct it? Well, if you direct it into Bank of America, we know what they're going to do with it, okay? So we want to direct it into our own private repository and start building the assets and the wealth that will enable us to build our society and build together all the other societies that are being birthed out of Pantera. So whether somebody has to license up, say the mechanic, or somebody is in the healing arts, which really does not require a license. And if you have a license that you got before, you rescind it and you terminate it. And you go private. You create a society and a ministry or a private contract association based on mutual benefit. It's as simple as that. That's a significant word or a phrase. I'm not in commerce. I'm not selling you something with an invoice and a commercial accoutrements attached to it. I'm simply exchanging value in mutual benefit. Okay. Now, that value exchange might be Federal Reserve notes that I'm willing to take, worthless pieces of paper that I can still go buy bread and milk with, at least right now. But it's still a private contract of mutual exchange. And so the basis of a society is mutual benefit, private contract association. And so if I'm a masseur and you want to come to my service, how do you enter my society? Just sign this contract. What does it say? It can be as simple as, hi, this is the Ken's Massage Society. The peanut gallery is reacting to that. Okay, so, and she doesn't think I give good massages, so what can I say? Okay, so, so Article of Association, Clause 1, you're a member of Ken's Massage Society. Article 2, whatever it is, you just, very simple. And this is an agreement of private contract and private association signed there. And it'll say, like in the Pantera contracts, because we're dealing with the area of law and sovereignty and all those things, it's quite extensive. It's written for our mutual protection. Basically says, I'm not practicing law, I'm not giving you legal advice or accounting advice or tax advice, all those kind of things. So it's a variation on the theme. Whatever your private service is, you just make sure that it's private and in no way is construable to be a public licensed commercial venture. And then it's mutual benefit and an agreed exchange. That's it.
Right, agreed exchange. That's the beauty of it, right? That's the sort of thing we're talking about doing, and creating all sorts of stuff. There's people in our group who are going to be able to make like furniture and do pottery and, art and various types of things. And it's just an exchange of,
Right.
So that's really the sort of lives we are choosing to go for, is the simple life, living, growing as much as we can on the land, being creative. Whatever we create, if somebody else can use it, we'll exchange it either for pieces of paper or other piece of creation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the way we're looking. So when you join, let's say, for example, the Heart Song Spiritual Society, we maybe give them an invitation and we create a contract saying, welcome to the society. The agreement is that you'll do that and we do this and you do that. I mean, is it something as simple as that we could just make it up for ourselves?
Yeah, you make it up. The template is, look how Pantera is created. Okay, we have the Gemstone University site where somebody enters electronically, and the terms of membership are established there. It says just like any other, like you sign on for Apple Pay. It's a commercial service on your Apple iPhone, and you want to have the ability to pay. Okay, it will always have terms of service or terms and conditions, and you have to click I agree to be able to enter into the use of that function or that service. Same thing when you join Pantera through the Gemstone site, it gives you the few basic things to fill in, the data and things like that, and then it says terms of service or terms and conditions and it won't let you go further unless you click on that and say you've read it, and then it gives you a place to go read it. Well, where you go to read it are our articles of association, which includes things like an area discussing self-responsibility. That's one of the primary points of our society is self-responsibility. Whatever baggage you have brought here, we will work together with you to help clean it up, because that's what we do. Get you disconnected from the baggage. Some of it's easy, some of it's harder. But that's part of what we're doing together, is helping each other disconnect from the baggage of the public system. That could be debts, taxes, all those kind of things. And then, of course, we're moving forward in how to cleanse or disconnect from that, move into our private life, living status, and all the rest of that. Paramount to that is self-responsibility. You're not here to blame us for your problems. You're not here to blame us if you try to apply what we're teaching and it doesn't work. We know it works. We've done it many, many times. In almost every case, there's a reason why it may not work. Almost always because of some issue that you either didn't attend to properly, or you didn't know how to, and you didn't, whatever it is. Okay. So self-responsibility is a major part of the terms of membership of Pantera. So whatever it is, you write it out. You could do it on a very simple website function. So let's say the masseuse or masseur, you want to come get that service, whether it's me or Joe or Bob, they set up a simple website, or somebody call, hey Bob, I want a massage. Fine, go to my website, enter in electronically, click where it says to click, agree where it says to agree, read the terms so you understand the terms of our relationship. And once you've done that, you'll get a printout that says, I've joined. Now you're in my private society, come on over and we'll do a mutual exchange, value exchange, and you'll get a massage and you'll give me a chicken. Okay. And we'll be happy. For Pantera, part of that refers to the PanteraPCA.org site, which is our public notice site. On there, we have our foundational documents. We have our process of how we notified the world system of our existence, gave them the opportunity to rebut or deny our right to do that, which was never done. So that's our perfected record. We describe how we are set up. We describe we have a board of trustees for certain purposes, a privy council, which is the governing body of the society, how that's set up, things like that. So you can do the same thing. If you choose to do it electronically, it can be done that way. If you want it in written form, you do it that way. So whatever your law form is, your rules of association, you put in articles of association.
Right, sounds good. I think Ricky's got a question for you.
Just for clarification, for example, the terms of acceptance of exchange, right, with the private society. So you just instructed that prospective customer to come and, go online and read the terms and agree to that, and now they're part of the private society. That doesn't mean membership to the society. It just means that you've accepted interacting with the society based on those pre-existing terms. Is that what I'm hearing? Or they're not becoming a part of your private society, right? They're still public.
No, they are.
Oh,
they are becoming, because you want them to be a member so that they are within the jurisdiction of your society, and the rules that you have set as articles of association are binding, because that's jurisdiction, which is an oath of relationship. You want jurisdiction in that respect, not to control, not to any of those things that we're moving away from, but for protection. It's mutual protection.
Does that leave that individual now a beneficial interest, has a beneficial interest in the society?
Possibly, but that can be, that's up to the nature of how you construct it. You can have and also remember that this is organic too. I mean, we've been building Pantera for 15 years. A lot of these questions and details, we have them in a lot of ways unwritten. We understand how we're doing this, but it takes a huge amount of time and work to perfect all of those things. And they're also by experience, so how do you know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it, and then you figure it out and you create some sort of rule. And I know people don't like rules, but sorry, there are rules. Your operating body of your law form. You don't know until something comes up. We're constantly identifying things that come up based on interactions, things that happen, and then we refine it. But we're not creating this huge body of codes and statutes and, that you have to do. You have to walk 3 steps forward and 2 to the left and 5 to the right before you can come, all that stupid stuff. Just simple, logical, common sense things. And if there is a law, quote unquote, within your society that seems to be unjust, and you have members who have an issue with it, they create a court of record and they deal with it as a jury of peers, as a common body. And so back to your question, somebody comes to you as a customer. You don't want customers. That's commercial. You convert them to a private member. And you can create levels of membership, a provisional member or a daily member. Somebody comes for a massage, they're a member for a day. They get a massage, they're now a non-member. They come back next week, they get another massage, they're a member. They go back, and leave, they're a non-member. They come back the third week and they say, I noticed that your exchange for me is 80 Federal Reserve notes for my massage, but that guy's getting them for 60. Why is that? Well, you can go from a daily member to an annual member, and create this donation, and you get 25% off your massages, things like that.
Okay, great. Very good.
Now, the other thing it kind of indicated, which leads to a whole nother level of where we're going with this, is, you're going to create things within your society, grow food, build furniture, do art, things like that. That's going to create value. Okay. How do you monetize that value? Okay. Do we want to monetize it as debt? Obviously not. Do we want to create a medium of exchange within our private society? Yes. We want to do that. You can create your heart song units of value. Okay. That, and you figure out how you want to do that. and how exchange happens within the society, so that you have less dependence on having to go out when there still exists Federal Reserve notes and so forth. You create value, and you create a unit of measure, which is your unit of value, your sovereign unit, or whatever you call it, that's exchangeable within your private society. Now, what if there's a private society across the road and they're doing the same thing? Well, then you come together within a mutually beneficial contract saying that we'll accept your units of value if you accept our units of value. Okay, well, let's look at how you're monetizing your units of value. You look at it, you decide that that's acceptable, and now you'll do exchange, one for one. Okay, and that could be repeated ad infinitum. Okay, and or you create a domestic, for lack of a better term, a domestic or a private society unit of value and a inter-society unit of value that's exchangeable. Okay, we're actually moving very rapidly to doing that within Pantera in a way that we will have our own currency that all of our societies can use and work with, that will be seamlessly fungible. You know what fungible means? It means exchangeable for something of like value. So if I have dollars and I go to Mexico, I want pesos, those Federal Reserve note dollars are fungible because I can exchange them at an agreed rate that exists out there for pesos. You know, Bitcoin exchange for OneCoin, or Bitcoin for, you know, other cryptocurrencies. That means they're fungible. Or Bitcoin for Federal Reserve notes, it's fungible. So progressively, we are going to be birthing a lot of societies. It is a decentralized system. It is not hierarchical. It's not under master control of Ken the dictator. But we're going to create a environment of interchange and exchange that will build and become more and more sophisticated. I'm not going to go into all the detail because that's a big topic. But what we want to do is start monetizing in private fungible currency mediums of exchange, so that, you know, you don't have to bring a chicken every time you want me to give you a massage. You can give me a Pantera unit.
Right. Yeah, and it's something that we could all agree. And I've actually come across, and I don't know if you have known as, they call themselves like freedom cells, like a cell, like we would be a freedom cell. We're sitting in our little area in North Carolina, and there's somebody else that's sitting in another, like maybe 5, 10, 15 miles away. We could ultimately create a network whereby we would be doing exchange with all sorts of people in their own little societies, or what they're calling freedom cells. That's the sort of thing I see, that ultimately if enough of us have our little groups, that we're producing materials, foods and whatever, that we could exchange them either with just one for another, or for that you were talking about the units of exchange. And ultimately that would be the way to step over the system of having to go into it as much and having to use the FRNs as much.
Right.
Ultimately, for me, living in the countryside where we can, like, these guys are very creative. They're going to be able to build buildings and, like, you know, smaller tiny houses and stuff like that. And then we're going to be able to make pottery and tiles and things. And then Libby's going to be crocheting, and, you know, between us, we're going to produce.
Can I get a sweater for Christmas?
Well, there you go. She's the crochet queen.
Or a jumper, as they say on your side of the water.
Yeah, that's a very strong possibility.
But see, this gets back to the value of coming together in a larger structure, such as what Pantera is. You know, and you have to understand, I think you do, that we have thought this through and brainstormed it for decades. Okay, looking at taking all the best, what we started in the conversation, the building blocks, the best of the world system that is able to be rearranged and structured in a way that is beneficial for our mutual benefit, and leave the rest behind. But the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So there's 2 phrases that I learned, and actually I think I created them in my own thinking a long time ago, that's very important to understand. One's called barrier to entry, and the other is called economy of scale. So what does that mean? Barrier to entry means that the world system has been created as a pyramid hierarchy where all the
Looks like he dropped off there.
It does. Oh, economies of scale and barrier to entry. No, he's back?
Well, no, I'm just saying I'm sure he will be back.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably won't take a moment. That was very interesting what we're getting into there. Meanwhile, I want to say to anyone that has a question, who make yourself known in the chat room. And I think we've only got 2 on phones. And a little later when we get Ken back on, if the phones want to jump in, just like open your mic and maybe make a little sort of noise like hello, because that brings up your icon on our screen and that makes us aware that you might want to have
hello.
Battery went out. He'll be right with you.
Awesome, thanks Andrea, that's brilliant. Yeah, cool, we figured something wonked out, so that's cool. So yeah, anyone that's in the chat room, please just make yourselves known there that you're going to want to ask a question. And then, like I said, you guys on the phones, when we get to the point that there's Ken. So when we get to the point, Ken, that we're going to get asked.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did unmute.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
We can hear you as you can hear us.
Well, the cord was hanging up. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know why.
But we can hear you.
Oh, there we go. Oh, that's me.
Can you hear
Okay.
us? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Okay. Hang on. I gotta turn some music off of here.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Barriers to entry, economies of scale.
okay. Okay, so let's first define barrier to entry. Okay. A barrier to entry means that there's a barrier to your entry. You cannot enter into a realm. You may want to, but there's a barrier. So I was describing the pyramid hierarchical structure of the world system. It is designed, as we all know, to put all the liability on the mass and funnel up all the equity and value to the pinnacle or the top of the pyramid, the elite. Okay. With that large, the control of money, control of politics, control of the world system, they have operated with impunity on the world scale. And we see the result of that, right? I think we can all agree on that. They also have huge benefits, okay? They can create world systems. They can create world banking systems that they control. They can create many, many things because of the scale that they operate on and the use of resources, usually financial to begin with, that we don't have. So that's a barrier to entry. Well, Pantera already has erased many barriers of entry. For example, if you want to operate in a global way to do business in Hong Kong or Vanuatu or Australia or Panama, most people don't know how to do that. It would take many people years to figure out how to do that. There's a certain barrier to the entry to the international platform. That's what we've done for 4 decades, really. So our members have immediate access to that. They don't have to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure it out. A lot of that cost is by doing mistakes. I can definitely tell you that we've made lots of mistakes and we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing that, but we learned from it. And then we refined our structure so that now any member of Pantera doesn't have to do any of those mistakes. And the barrier to entry to have a immediate global presence has been erased. Okay, we don't have everything that the top of the pyramid has as yet, but we're building towards that. You know, we're starting to have our own in-house bank and network of banks, and the ability to use those tools in the banking world to create capital to fund projects. Most people don't know how to do that. It would take you 20 years or longer, if you were able even to do it, to figure that out. Well, we have figured that out. It's there. So you, as a small society, do not have a barrier to entry to that realm, if there's a need and a function that would benefit your society. Okay? So that's one aspect. The other is economy of scale. It's the flip side of the same coin, because the economy of scale means that, again, you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to put in place something on the scale that is actually above your current scale. In other words, you can have immediate quantum expansion to a scale if that benefits you. Okay, so the economy is that as a mutual benefit society, we've come together and we're pooling our resources. So as we're building our private bank and building our capitalized projects and all the things that are happening now within Pantera, that both erases barrier of entry and produces an economy of scale. It gives you the larger scale that you couldn't have on your own. Okay, that's the benefit here. One of those components is going to be the ability to have a completely comprehensive private monetary system that is both private within our society, but fungible interactively with the rest of the world system. Okay, whether that's other societies, other cryptocurrencies, and or the current fiat system. Because the barrier to entry for most small scale societies that create their own private currency, like there's a lot of communities that have their own currency. It was started, one of the pioneers was the city of Ithaca in New York. They created the Ithaca dollar like 30 years ago. And many communities have followed with that. But can you take an Ithaca dollar and go down to Tucson, Arizona and buy a Mexican dinner? No, you can't. Okay, can the Tucson dollar go to Ithaca and buy whatever they're selling up there? New York moss. So I think it's wet up there. No, you can't. Okay. How do we bring it together so there's a seamless fungibility and an interchange? Well, for one, there has to be an architecture to maintain that, you know, a physical architecture, a software data management architecture, a communication system, things like that, and a seamless interface between multiple currencies and or a common currency that in turn is fungible with other currencies like Bitcoin or FRNs or whatever. Again, I'm not going to go into detail. It's a lot of detail, but we have a lot of things well in advanced stages for being able to do that. Next year, it's going to start really coming into form and manifestation. And by doing this, we have the ability to truly be local and at the same time be global and live local. You know, you guys are interested in creating a local, land-based society. Probably most of you don't necessarily want to travel around the world, but you want to be a global being and have interactive capability with other local societies around the world. Well, this is what we're building together as the Pantera Global Society.
Yeah, that's brings the whole thing together. That's this AI that's actually very beneficial to us, that we all know each other because of this, so we can interact on a global scale through this type of medium. And you being able to share with us right here, right now, is because of the stability that this can be global. And those of us that are going down the same route, seeing the same visions, we can support and encourage each other and do all sorts of stuff interactively globally, like you're saying. And thanks to you creating what we've done already. And we're just kind of like coming in as a, we're coming in as just a small part, but the small parts become very strong when we all unite together. So that's what I'm seeing as the beauty of it. So yeah, it's fantastic. So
hang on 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
I gotta get a throat lozenge because I'm gonna start coughing. So I'll be right back.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead. Ahead. I'm going to mention to everyone that's on the call here that Libby, of course, I think comes back with any questions you have. And like I've said here, anybody else would like to make themselves known that they have questions. And, because if we've got anything that we want to kind of bring up on this topic and any other that Ken can help with, just please, make yourself known. There is some function you can put a hand up, as far as I know, because I know other people have done that in the past. The message box here would be very helpful, that we know that you are there with a question.
And I am keeping my eye on the message box.
Great,
thank you, Linda.
Got your message. So that's great, and I know Ricky's going to a couple of questions anyway. So, you want to go ahead with a couple of questions? Sure. When Ken's ready, and then Libby, you jump right in after that. See where we go. So, whenever you're good, Ken. I know you've done a lot of talking here at this point. So.
Yeah, I'm fine. Okay.
All right. So,
one of the questions I had for you, and first expressing gratitude for all that you've done and others thus far. Thank you for that. A lot of times those that kind of wake up to the reality of things begin to go through a process of letting go of things, right? Because they kind of first have to breathe. So they're feeling like they're moving those types of things from their lives and come back to a little bit more of a simple life. Or on the other hand, they may have their lives ripped apart by
Hey, hang on, you're breaking up. You're breaking.
I'm hoping they're still on.
Your picture. So you guys there? Now their picture just went off. Okay, Libby, it's up to you.
It's happening now.
Well, but I was just trying to.
Okay, you're gonna have to repeat that. Okay, you're
right here. I don't know if you can hear us, but you were right out now. So could you repeat your question?
Yeah, sure. Is that coming through better?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I was just kind of saying that a lot of people that kind of wake up, let's just use that term, they either release or let go of all the things that they feel are weighing them down. It's almost that the physical is representative of the heaviness of that kind of world they're trying to keep alive, so to speak, or the system itself rips your world apart and you discover that the system was never there for your benefit or for your welfare in the first place. And so you begin to wake up that way. So it's kind of, people come in different doors. Those are just two examples. The estate, establishing the estate, and I, like many of us have looked into different avenues and channels and sitting as the executor and sitting as the settler and sitting, in all these different positions. My question is, for those that don't have, quote unquote, any assets to move into an estate, what I recognize that maybe the long-term benefit is that all the fruits of one's labor from that point moving forward can be passed on to, if there is a beneficiary that you would like to leave it to, within the structure of the society, within the structure of the private, estates and trusts. But if you don't have anything, is part of the let's see here, status correction step is I know you mentioned something that I've come across on many different occasions, which is while they claimed you dead and lost at sea and then dead, if you come back and reclaim that you are living, the man is living, all proceeds that were administered and created in that estate while lost at sea have to be returned back to the beneficiary. So is there a possibility that there may be resources that are available that through the status correction process and through the estate structure, is there maybe resources that are already there for each living man and woman that for those of us that have maybe had everything ripped apart and taken away because we didn't have the right understanding and now do, is there something maybe there for those to build their future with from becoming a member and applying what you've come to understand?
Yeah. Well, there's several levels of your question in my answer. One is for many people who arrive, let's say, at our doorstep with nothing, and they fit the description of the line from the song, "When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose." If they want to do status correction and or create an estate structure, in many respects, not necessarily all respects, but in a good number of respects, it's simpler and cleaner and easier to start from nothing. So anybody, regardless if you have things to bring forward, can start an estate structure and or a status correction. You will then be building a pure, clear, empty vessel, so to speak, empty container, that from that point forward, you're going to build assets and resources that are not attached to the public system. So in a lot of ways, it's easier. In fact, we make it very clear that we are not giving any guarantee in saying that, one, yes, you'll be able to, like some people come to us with foreclosure issues or repo issues that somebody's chasing them trying to take their car away. We do not guarantee, because there is no guarantee that this is a magic bullet. We have kept people in houses for 6 to 8 years without any problem. Other people have gone through steps and at some point, because of some problem or issue or flaw in something in their setup, that the status correction and or earlier versions of it were not able to stop a foreclosure. So there is no guarantee on that. There is no absolute guarantee that what we do in status correction will enable somebody without question to stop the IRS from seizing your bank account or garnishing your wage or something like that. But in most cases, in the tax issue, we've been successful in dealing with that. So the point is that when somebody comes in with nothing as you're describing it, if they want to build a new adventure and it's appropriate to create an estate structure, then you can build it pure and it's not got contractual attachments to the past. And so that's one aspect of it. So is it an issue if they don't have anything? Absolutely not. On the other hand, if the what was your? There's another part of the question.
So yeah, the other part I guess was okay. So you come into nothing. I guess the other part was kind of what has been termed like reversionary interest.
Oh yeah, exactly. So let's describe that and be clear on that. Okay. In the simple equation of a man goes to sea, is lost, and presumed dead, pronounced dead, returns, proves he's the man, claims the estate, the profit and proceed, meaning the rents and the things that are generated off the estate while he was absent, are what would be characterized as reversionary interest. They will revert back to him. Okay, but those are, let's say, accrued resources that are already in the public system. Okay, and of course that was a landed estate. Okay, that was an estate that existed in the system hundreds of years ago. In our current system, what happens when a baby is born and it's a living being and it gets converted to the public franchise, something is created called a decedent estate. Okay, and I started talking about earlier, and I didn't quite get to that, where I was characterizing the difference between a cestake V, which means a living beneficiary of a perpetual estate, and a cestake trust.
Right.
The words, the cestake trust means beneficiary with limited beneficial use of the public facility of the decedent estate. Okay. It's a decedent estate because in the legal terminology, a decedent is defined as something that is dying. Okay. We are dying for as long as we're attached to the realm of the dead, and we're attached as the source, the battery, like in the Matrix, that's taking our living substance and our energy out of us and creating fictionalized, monetized debt and all the rest of that. Everything that's created in that form, in that system, is in the public, is debt. Okay, it's all held, as far as the United States is concerned, under the rules of the Trading with the Enemy Act that created something called the Bureau of Public Debt, which is now run and controlled by the Secretary of the Treasury. And the Secretary of the Treasury means the Department of Treasury under the executive branch, which is part of the bankruptcy and the administrative reorganization of the corporate bankrupt United States, which was moved in 1944 into the United Nations as a pledged collateral debtor under the IMF. Okay, so basically. And of course, you know, we are the enemy as long as we're attached to a U.S. person franchise, and we have to be licensed to operate in commerce and all of that. Everything that's created post 1933 as monetized debt within that bankruptcy system is held by the Bureau of Public Debt, and only debt operates in the public. Okay, there is no substance of value. All of that is on the private. Every time commercial paper is created in the name of a franchise, it is debt. So whether that's a birth certificate, a certificate of vaccination, or a social security number and account, or a traffic ticket, or a court case, or a tax bill, it's all public monetized debt. It cannot be anything else. Okay, but it always creates a corresponding mirroring of credit or value on the private side of the ledger, which is equity. Okay, as long as we're a bankrupt attached to that bankrupt franchise, we have no claim or access to the equity. Once we change our status, we can claim it. But because we're under military occupation and under the rules of the military occupation, we cannot demand them to give it to us or convert it to fungible currency. Because to do that would create more debt on the public side. There has to be, in effect, an instant liquidation of the debt and a zeroing out of the account every time something's created, public and private. Now, what that means is the concept people have of when I claim my estate and I correct my status and et cetera, along the lines of what you're saying, will I get access to all of that value? And the answer is no, it can't. You can't move it from the private side of the ledger to the public. It doesn't correspond. So you can't get a public account that will provide what you're asking. Ultimately, what the usufruct, which is a military occupier, the usufructuary trustee, who's holding all that property that ultimately belongs to the living beneficiary, the SFHs, we as the beneficiaries, they are required under their international treaty, under the duties of usufruct, to pay for everything. Okay, so we may not get, quote unquote, what people call money or money of account in the bank account, but what they're required to do is pay for all taxes, duties, repairs, maintenance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we've been building for 4 years in the status correction course.
Right.
We're not there at the finish line yet, but we are structuring everything under the understanding of how that works to create all the public officers as trustees and to bind them to their fiduciary and usufructuary duty to meet their international treaty requirements under duties of usufruct. Additionally, we're not giving them the estate. We're putting it in trust. We're fulfilling the Trading with the Enemy Act requirements that can be found at 12 USC 95A and A2 and so forth, which talks about how to operate within the context of the system.
Okay.
And, but see, if you were to go to a court and have the court do what they should do, if you do it correctly, and see you on the private side of the court in a court of chancery to act as a chancellor and to serve you as equity, then they're supposed to create a public trustee, which could be a clerk of the court or whatever, to do all of that settlement.
Right.
So that you do not have to handle public funds.
That's right. That's what I was kind of asking about. That's what I've been kind of told, that you don't ever go back into the public and accrue or create more public debt. You're actually discharging debt on the private side by them being responsible and liable as trustee in administrating that estate to offset any liabilities, taxes, duty, because ultimately the reason we're paying any of that is because we're paying excise tax, use tax. None of these. Once something's paid for once, there's no need to resell it over and over and over and over and over again, or quote unquote tax it over and over and over again. That's just our use tax because we're operating.
You just cut off again.
Oh, is it back?
He's frozen something for real.
Yeah.
Oh.
Your connection.
Yeah, it does that a lot.
We're gonna give it a minute.
We're losing you. Yeah, it remains. Are they doing what they're required to do?
Oh.
Not quite yet. We are getting there, and that's part of the collective thrusting a body of evidence and record, which is all we want. And basically, once we claim the estate, we create the private trust, put it under special deposit, give it all back to them, which fulfills the Trading with the Enemy Act,
Right.
95A2. Then what we have set up is a life estate, okay, where they are required to fulfill anything and everything under safe harbor, safe passage, and hospitality. And in fact, somebody just asked me that question a few weeks ago, and I wrote up, I've been using that phrase for 2 years, and I knew inherently or intrinsically what it meant. Somebody asked me, well, what does it mean specifically? Why? So I went and created a 2-page paper, and I looked at the definitions: safe harbor, safe passage, and hospitality, which translates to what we're talking about.
Right.
Safe passage means that I can pass through your valley of death and fear no taxation. Evil in the form of taxation. I can pass safely through the public thoroughfares as a private man sojourning away from my private estate. Okay. And that's what we want. So we're not at war with the United States. We're at peace with the United States. And all we want is the reciprocation of what they've already bound themselves to by other codes and statutes and international treaties. So that's safe passage, the right to travel. Safe harbor simply means safety from danger. You're on the high seas. What do you want? You want safe harbor. So when you're moving through the high seas of instability, of commercial danger, which is what the public exists in with all the stress and the debilitation that brings, I want to move in safe harbor wherever I am moving. Okay. I'm not in their world and I'm not of it, but I can move through it safely. And their hospitality is unlimited. It is required to maintain my life estate. And once we have that, and then we're building our private societies, and we're building a global infrastructure for that, and monetizing the value we create, which we don't go into the public to use your public script or their private script as military Federal Reserve notes, et cetera, that what we create in value doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to our society and ourselves as living beneficiaries, and we build that together. And that becomes a receptacle to transfer the locked-in energy that they've been feeding off of and move it into a living structure.
Gotcha. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Should we get Bruce to ask his question? Bruce, did you want to?
Yeah. Okay. Do we? Bruce, come on. There's Bruce.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, in the last week, for the first time in a few years, the pirates at the Internal Revenue Collection Agency have decided to reinstitute enforcement activity. And so they've notified me that they're going to, even though they already have a notice of lien at the county recorder, illegally filed, but probably Ken would have another perspective on that. Even though they have that notice of lien, they say they're going to institute a new notice of lien and levy what they can get their hands on. And I'm not sure what that is. I don't think there's anything in the bank they can get, but I don't know what kind. The sheriff in Santa Cruz County says that he's really pleased as punch to work with the federal brigands. In any case, we're looking forward with great eagerness to starting in on the status correction process in the very near future. And I'm just wondering, how far do we need to get into status correction before I can begin to wade through the murky swamp of this relationship I seem to have with these guys?
You have to get this far. Not this far, but this far.
Oh, no.
But not this far, just only this far. What that translates to is, we strongly emphasize the importance of, am I still on? Yes. Building the proper foundation, not putting the cart before the horse, not being basically controlled or dictated by the external force of something like along the lines of what you're dealing with. Meaning take the time to do it correctly, build the proper foundation, and get yourself in the right place with the right knowledge and integration. Obviously not mastery and perfection, that really takes years, but really understanding what you're doing. Fortunately, with the IRS, 99%, maybe 100% of what needs to be done is administrative, meaning by documents and by mail, where you don't have to face or interact with them person to person, being to being, or being to person, or go to court. And of course, at the level that you're talking about, it's not likely that you would necessarily go to court, so the nuts and bolts answer to your question is, how long does that take? It's different for everybody, but it's minimally 6 months. Okay. So if you start in the very near future, like as in tomorrow, you got to figure 6 months. But in almost every case, there are ways to defer and deflect things down the road, kick the can down the road, so that 6 months is not a problem. Get things founded, get everything in place by that time, by kicking the can down the road. In the case of the IRS, first of all, protect what you don't want them to take. Don't have things in the franchise name, period. You got money in an account, take it out. Once you start the status correction course, you have to close franchise accounts anyways. So, just take the normal precaution, not because you're avoiding or avoiding taxes or doing anything that's illegal. You're simply rearranging your affairs for the optimization of your best interests, period. Because we, as with everything, we don't go into controversy. We don't say they are trying to impose an illegal tax. We say, fine, it's a valid tax. Because based on what I've been operating as a franchise, it is a valid tax, regardless of any of the things that all the tax people who've researched this for 40, 50 years said that, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's this, it's that, the other. They have an individual master file that says I'm selling bullets to Angola. Doesn't matter. The franchise is doing what they say. The franchise is somehow connected to that Title 27 taxable excise tax activity, selling bullets or, selling drugs, whatever. And they do, and you use the right phrase. You said the collector. The Internal Revenue Service is a collection agent for the Internal Revenue, which is a lawful de jure entity in Puerto Rico that creates excise tax. So they put the franchise there in order to create the excise tax, and then they send it over to the public system and have the legal debt collector collect it. Okay? So we don't go into controversy. We don't push back and say it's illegal. We say, fine, we agree with you. We acknowledge and accept it. But when we have corrected our status, we have the ability to accept it as a deed that created a monetized debt on the public side. And when we accept it as a deed, equity now comes into our benefit. Because there's a maximum of equity that says that equity will not perfect an imperfect gift. It's a gift. Let's treat it as a gift. Do you send a gift back to the giver? No, you accept it. So look at what they created as a gift. Every debt created on the public side, once your status is corrected, is a gift. You accept it by acknowledgement, acceptance as grantee, which means you now hold the equity because you have the standing to be the beneficiary, the living beneficiary, and you put it in a specific place for special deposit, which means it belongs to that trust and nothing else. And now you appoint the IRS officer as a trustee because he has legal title now and he's responsible for the liability. Now he is the taxpayer. That's what we do. So we are not in any way resisting or going into controversy, because the minute you go into controversy, even with languaging, you call them brigands. Brigand is a pirate, okay? But they're legal pirates. They're doing it legally because every attorney is carrying a bar card, which is a letter of marque and reprisal, which gives them legal authority to board the vessel of an enemy combatant, which you are, as long as you're operating through their franchise as an enemy of the state. So they are legal pirates, but we've agreed to their game. It's time for us to say we do not agree to your game. We're creating our own game, and we're creating our own rules based on the way we want to live. And here's my rescission and revocation and termination of all the contracts that I previously, in error and mistake and ignorance, entered into in your game. We're just stopping playing their game.
All righty. Thanks a lot.
Hang on, I got to get some water. I'll be back.
Okay. And we are at our normal stopping mark, but if we can keep it for a while. How are you doing there, Charlie?
Yeah, no, we're good here. So, as long as Ken is, up for finishing up, maybe this question will be the finish up. Let's see. And if anyone else has a really pertinent question, let's, make yourself known. We will, finish up.
Oh, we have a question from Linda.
Yeah, so let's finish that. Let Ken finish this up with Bruce.
No, we're done.
Oh, you're done? We're done with Bruce. Okay, lovely. So, Linda, what did you have to...
Nope, sorry, mistake.
Why don't you jump on the audio, and you could ask your question there, right there and then. That'd be easier than us doing it through.
Yeah, just
Okay.
your button.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, lovely ladies. How are you?
Great.
And hi, Ken. I'm really impressed with everything. It's fantastic what's been going on. My question, you have a little bit of it from me before, is in relation to the fact that in our case of the marriage certificate, we have two of us obviously on the wrong side of the system in this regard. So how do you think that it can work in my situation to be able to correct that through the status correction or through the estate first, or what do you suggest is the best approach?
Well, it wouldn't be through the estate structure. Remember what we talked earlier about? The estate structure is a way to create a means to hold property, a project, and other elements of the organization if somebody is not doing status correction. We're talking about now on a personal level, personal or family. If somebody does status correction and they're not going to build a larger project like what Libby and Jolly are doing as their land-based society, you don't need our estate structure. You would just do a status correction, and everything in terms of moving things out of the franchise is affected by doing that. So dealing with a marriage certificate is you wouldn't do it in the estate structure. So you have to do status correction.
Okay.
Excuse me. It's a variation on the same theme, whether it is an IRS bill or an IRS publicly filed at the county notice of lien or intent to lien or any of those things, or a court case. They're all the same thing. They're deeds, the same thing I was just saying. It's a gift. But if we don't have the status and we're a surety to the bankrupt franchise, then we're holding the liability, and now it is a liability, meaning we have to pay everything that is on the public side. We're the debt servicer, we're the surety, all of the debt aspects are attached to that. So in the case of a marriage certificate, it's actually a corporate merger.
Yes.
The corporation called Joe comes together with the corporation called Sally, and they create a merger to create a new entity called, Joe and Sally married couple. It's a contract with the state. It's going to create new monetized public debt in the name of the marriage. Let's say they have a joint tenancy in a mortgage in a house that they quote unquote buy. Well, that belongs to the marriage. So then the state has the authority to do what it wants. If say they want to separate, they want to divorce, it's all a matter of what the state is going to do under its rules to settle the affairs of that corporate merger. It owns the rights to the children. The children are wards of the state, as we are, and we as wards of the state are given guardianship, but not true authority over the children. As long as you do what the state wants, then they'll let you keep the children. If you don't, they'll take them away. If you don't allow them to be vaccinated now, which is mandatory in California and soon coming to a state near you,
For sure.
then they will take them away from you. Okay, so in equity, they're just like everything else we've talked about. There's the private side of the ledger. There's equity that's been accrued. All the underlying bonds that are attached to the marriage are traded. Those create profits and proceeds. They belong to the estate, but they're under the executor, which is the state, the corporate state, because you're lost at sea. When you come back from being lost at sea, you prove you're a living being in our court of our living beings and all the rest that we do. Then you go through the steps like we just talked about with Bruce. You get to where you have the starting point that you can accept the deed, and then you do the steps, including the marriage certificate, and then basically you remove the state attachment.
Okay, thank you. there was something else. Currently, I mean, recently I had the situation where my car was towed while I was at a protest, and they charged me nearly over $350, and you had to pay to get your car back. And even though I wasn't very happy about it, of course, I had to find that and do that. And then since there's a fine. Now, in this current situation, before you do status correction, is it better to just go along and do that? Or is there a way at the moment that you can stand up to that and be successful? Or is it all?
Well, there are a lot of ways. They're all in commerce because it's an operation in commerce. And there's a huge amount of materials out there to deal with that. Not necessarily some of the things like doing a secured party and acceptance for value. Yeah. Sometimes that can work. A lot of times it doesn't. But there's lots of ways within the statutory arena in commerce to negate or counter or offset or basically force them to a standstill if you want to take the time and do the research to do that. We have not, that's a field that
courtesy notice.
Yeah, I mean, you can do in commercial terms, you can do a conditional acceptance.
Yes.
I accept this conditionally upon proof of claim, because see, in commerce, you always need to stay in honor. And if you go into dishonor by rejecting it or being silent, then they win. That's where they get perfected title to that trust, because it's a trust. And so you have to stay in honor, and the ideal way to stay in honor is return it to them or you don't return the instrument, you hold on to it, but you return a response, which is conditional acceptance on proof of claim. Prove to me that I'm in contract with you, that there's a valid contract, that I've agreed to this, and things like that. Oftentimes you can win just doing that.
Yeah, because they're basically operating in fraud anyway. And is that the basic way that ends up being?
Well, but you see that's
depends where you're looking at.
Yeah, and we don't say they're in fraud.
No,
because
true.
And yes, we understand in the ultimate sense it's very fraudulent. But you have to put yourself, we talked about this last time. Yes, you have to put yourself in their program. They have a program. They operate on a program. It's a holographic insert from a source that we don't need to get into now, that's programmed the world system. And you have many, many millions and billions of people who have agreed to play in that game. Like I just said, we are moving ourselves out of that game. But within the game, the technical structure that is commit fraud. But the way they've structured it with full disclosure in plain sight, they've told you to do.
I want to do them. One of the options I have is to go to the Ombudsman, because I do feel there's been so many people caught by these particular traffic signs because of the placement of them, that they're making a lot of money out of it daily.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one option I can do at the moment anyway. But thank you for that. Excellent.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Nice.
No problem. You're lovely to hear you too. Thank you.
Yeah. So do you have any final words of wisdom for us, Ken? Because we're going to wrap it up now, but you've certainly given us many. Yeah.
No, I think we've really covered a vast array of subject, and I think we're probably a good stopping point, unless somebody has a last-minute burning question.
Yeah, we don't seem to have any more burning questions.
Well, there's one about perhaps some kind of online seminar with us that we might be able to contribute FRNs for.
No, that's really all within the context of becoming a member. Okay. There's a continuum of new materials, new things, seminars, videos, things that I create and more other members are creating. So that's really where we focus everything.
Yeah, this is a particular member that had a question in here, and I thought it was open to everyone, but it was just to me. So,
Okay, very good. Okay,
thank you.
all right, very good.
All right then. Well, thanks very much, Ken. We, as always, appreciate you so much, and you've really filled us with lots of information again today. And certainly, this will be a good one to listen back through to clarify all that information that you've shared. So, absolutely, 100 thank yous, and we look forward to the next connection.
Very good. Well, as the emoticon in Skype looks like, here's 2 thumbs up.
There we go. Yeah, I love that one.
All right. Thank you very much. I look forward to coming to your Heart Song Society land.
Oh,
And
we're so excited about it. You will be a very early guest once we got the place cleaned up and sorted out. Yeah, that would be wonderful. So yeah, absolutely, that would be fantastic. I look forward to that. Yeah, lots of good stuff ahead. Really.
Okay, very good.
Thank
all
you.
right, well, everybody have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all our listeners.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, I'm going to play us a little song as we go out, if I can make my computer do the things I'd like it to do. So that will be really good. So yeah, again, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We are so grateful to everyone that joins us every week. And we will be back at the usual thing, same time, same place next week, just with the usual stories from the heart. I think we've got quite a lot of family members out there with stories to tell us.
Oh, yeah.
we will be back, as always, to support and encourage each other, share our stories, and have lots of fun. So cheerio for now, everybody, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all our listeners.
Thanks so